Clay Holmes, we are not worthy. Oh my God. On game 161 of the regular season for the New York Mets, backs yet again, once again, on the wall, backs on the wall, and who steps up when the Mets need it most? Not David Peterson, not Kodai Senga, not even Brandon Sproat yesterday. No, it is Clay Holmes, who was utilized as a reliever his last couple times out there, comes up today there on not regular rest, and he steps up and gives the Mets 6 innings of dominant one-hit baseball. How we doing, everybody? It's your guy Wardy here, and I'm amped up because the Mets playoffs hopes are still alive. Regardless of what the Reds do tonight, the Mets will be here alive tomorrow in game 162. If the Reds lose and the Mets can win, and they're in, and if they do find themselves winning in the Reds, then it simply comes down to needing the Brewers to win. And yes, I know we're all shaking in our boots about that tomorrow, but let's focus on what we can control, and that was this massive 5-0 Metropolitan victory. Spam all those W's, everybody watching live on a replay. Holy one hitter indeed, Mario. Thank you so much for the donation. Clay Holmes was locked in. Clay Holmes was utterly dominant for the New York Mets, and my God, did they need it. In a day where the Mets have gotten no semblance of length of their rotation, what feels like at all this entire second half, outside of 1 or 2 David Pearson starts, and outside of a couple really great first couple starts for Nolan McLean to begin his young career. We have been longing, we have been dying for someone outside of McLean to step the heck up in this rotation, and Clay Holmes did exactly that today, everybody. The bullpen was dazzling from what we saw in Tyler Rogers, Brooks Raley, Mr. Edwin Diaz, and everybody in between, folks. So hit those buttons on your way in. Help us get to 35,000 subscribers, our next short-term goal here on the platform. We are just around 100 away, and we're giving away to one lucky subscriber a Mets jersey of whatever player you currently want on the roster. Just make sure to hit those buttons, and thank you guys kindly for that. I will give that jersey away approximately 1 week after we've hit 35K. We got Juliet gifting a membership. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. We got my guy here with the $2 way to play. Really do appreciate that, brother. Hope you are fantastic. Everybody coming in live on a replay. I want to see from you guys. How are we feeling today, everybody? The Reds, yes, we understand that game is out of the hands of the New York Mets, but the reason why I'm live now and not live later is because I was only going to go live later today instead of now if the Mets lost today, because if the Reds win and the Mets lost, then the Mets are pretty much cooked. However, now that the Mets won this ball game, headlined by dominance from Mr. Clay Holmes, a bullpen that was nothing short of dazzling that you guys can see right here, right now, we're going to break down my final line grade for Clay Holmes today on a scale of 1 to 10 here in a little bit, so be on lookout for it, everybody. But I want to hear from you guys in the chat down below. How would you grade Clay Holmes' final line? As you guys see there, 1 hit allowed, the only hit allowed this entire ball game by this Mets pitching staff. Tremendous work. No reliever today anything when it came to the walks, either in the sake of Raley, Rogers, and Diaz. And on the hitting end, the Mets didn't get a crazy amount of hits here against Yuri Perez and the bullpen of the Miami Marlins, but what they did get was a Poiber that was hungry and that was red hot there in Miami as a Florida native. Alonso finds himself with the biggest hits in this entire ball game. He was a part of the first 3 runs for the Mets in this ball game, and then the Mets tack on some much needed insurance that we saw later on in this one, all the way in the 9th inning. That is exactly what you want from this Mets team today. And in a day where you do not have Brett Baty, because yes, our biggest fear has become a reality. He's on the injured list with the oblique injury, and even if it's not going to be long term, it's going to have him out for the remainder of how much the Mets would probably need him, unless they F around, get all the way to at least the NLDS, if not the NLCS, but we'll worry about that should we get there. We just got to make playoffs first. That's the most important thing here. So Baty, I'm feeling for him, but I'm wishing him the best, and I really do hope he heals up fast. We all miss him in this Mets lineup right now. Dylan Ross did not get a chance to toe the rubber yet. However, he is now with this Mets team, as he was officially called up, that we saw, that we talked on the platform multiple times, including the past 24 hours or so. Check out that content in case you guys do not know Dylan Ross, the flame-throwing, towering right-hander that could impact this Mets bullpen as soon as tomorrow. And speaking of tomorrow, now the Mets secured such a big 5-0 victory today, it begs the question, what are the Mets going to do with their rotation tomorrow? Are they going to go with Sean Manaea, who has looked terrible basically every single time out there as a starter this year? Are they going to go with David Peterson on short rest after he, again, was shaking his boots last time out there against the Cubs? Are they going to go in a complete bullpen game, knowing that they didn't need to utilize too many of the relievers today? We'll have to wait and see, everybody. But what we know, and Jonathan might be a guy that's utilized tomorrow to a degree, depending on how he pitches. A lot of uncertainty. I'm sweating bullets. I'm stressed and sweating these bullets. But all in all, the Mets got the victory today, everybody. everybody. So let's let it rip as we always do. After every big victory throughout the course of the 162 here on the WardyNYM platform, we got to do it. You guys ready for it? Yes, folks, let's let it rip with the one, the only, the official, hopefully not, but potentially the final post-game win jingle of the calendar season. I pray that's not the case. I hope we get to do it tomorrow, and then on Tuesday, and then on Wednesday, and then on Thursday, then on all the other days here until the Mets win the damn thing. But in the meantime, let's let it rip, everybody, with the one, the only, the official WardyNYM post-game jingle, baby. Let's go! Shout out to my guys Greg and Jordan, as always, with the WardyNYM post-game jingle. Love it or hate it, it's here to stay. It's corny, it's silly, it's all the right things and all the wrong things at the same time. And folks, we got a lot to get into in this ball game, as I mentioned. Thank you so much to everybody with the donations. We did not do lobster today. We're deviating away from the lobster. The lobster has had too much of a losing streak going. Otherwise, I would be doing the lobster right now. We're kind of just going with whatever's going to work at this point. The same way the Mets are just throwing things at the wall to see what sticks. What we saw yesterday with their lineup was Carlos Mendoza doing that by putting Cedric Mullins back in center, which never made sense over Tyrone Taylor, regardless of him saying he didn't want to play him 3 days in a row. Missed me with that nonsense Game 7 mentality? I think not. Today, however, Tyrone Taylor in the line for this Mets team, and yes, you guessed it, impactful yet again. Tyrone Taylor has returned for 3 games, and in all 3 games, he has been a difference maker. Game 1, he has himself a run-saving throw from center. Cedric Mullins, Brandon Nimmo, Jose Siri, no one's doing that for this team right now. Speaking of Jose, he actually cleared through the DFA portal, so folks, he is staying in the Mets organization. He's outrighted to AAA Syracuse. Yes, everybody, Jose Siri is still New York Met, and he's under club control beyond this season, so love him or hate him, he's not going anywhere just yet either. But Tyrone Taylor with a massive 2-run hit that we saw in his second game. Now today, another vital hit for this Mets team, a single that leads to more runs for this amazing Mets club. Shout out TT, and what I thought was a very impressive game for him today. Shout out Clay Holmes, in which I cannot get over how utterly dominant this man was. Not only to just give up one singular hit, even with the 3 walks that he worked around, I'm awfully impressed with Clay Holmes and his ability today. He stepped up. He was the stopper, and we have been longing to see a stopper in this Mets rotation outside McClain. What feels like all of not just the second half, but even going all the way back to June this season, as soon as Kodai Senga first went down for a wood injury. So thank God, thank goodness, Clay Holmes was able to step up and have his best start as a starter, mind you, and as a New York Mets starter. Say what you will about Clay Holmes and what has been a Jekyll and Hyde season for him a little bit, in the sake of how bad the rotation has been. We've been needing more out of him versus what he should necessarily be giving in a first-year reliever turned starter for the first time since 2018, because we haven't had anyone good of quality for great stretches. So that's why I get fed up when Clay Holmes is a 5-9 starter and walks 3 batters and gives up 3 earned runs. You know, that isn't good. That's nothing more than a 4 or 5, but that is what the Mets signed him to be at the end of the day, and he finishes his first season as a New York Met with right around a 3.5 ERA and 165 innings. That is really good, all things considered. And what we just saw Mr. Clay Holmes do something on, mind you, game 161 to step up when the Mets were in a do-or-die circumstance. He did exactly what we saw from Santana and Mr. John Maine in the past, so congratulations to Clay Holmes, and now being a part of what I think is very exciting company for guys that were able to step up down the stretch in the clutch when this team needed it most. So that, for all those reasons, everybody, shout out Clay Holmes. He has been one of, if not honestly, the most reliable starter the Mets have had this season, as crazy as that is to say. Given that David Pearson has fallen off a cliff, knowing that he's handled more innings than he's ever had in his career, and it just hasn't worked out really in his favor here in the second half, seeing what Clay Holmes has been able to relatively do consistently from the start of the season to now the end is nothing short of absolutely impressive. So major shout out to Clay. He's going to get a big grade from me. Greg, speaking of the Clay grades, he gives him a 8 grade out of 10 there with a $2 donation. Thank you so much for that, Greg. I appreciate that. We got Lebo in the chat says, with a $2 holla, if the Phillies beat the Twins, Brewers try tonight? Of course. Yeah, the Brewers aren't officially locked in there. That was my mistake yesterday. It felt like they were, but they aren't yet. So the Brewers do still have something to play for. But the problem, and I say this as of now before the game really gets going here, so we'll see what happens once the game actually transpires. The Brewers have a pitcher that isn't nearly as good as Ashcraft, who the Reds have towing the rubber today. So whether or not we'd see a masterclass of a pitching duel or a lopsided affair where the Reds are hitting and the Brewers don't get much going because their pitching gets rocked, that has yet to be seen. That's why we're doing this show now, everybody, because if you're watching this on replay, if the Mets do find out the Brewers win tonight, it's okay, but the problem is we need the Brewers to win tomorrow, regardless on what the Mets do. If the Mets win and the Reds win tomorrow and they sweep the Brewers, we're cooked. We don't make playoffs because that's just what the current playoff configuration is. This is what happens when the Mets sit on their hands and lose 2 out of 3 the last time they were in Cincy. But right now, as we currently speak, the Mets are a half game up, basically the same as the Reds, knowing the Reds have the tiebreaker if they're at the same wins and losses. But regardless on what happened, now knowing that the Mets have secured this victory, they're staying alive until tomorrow. And the great news is that if you're watching this on replay a couple hours after it's been alive and we come to find out that the Reds lose tonight, then folks, you're winning and you're in. That's all the Mets will need tomorrow. Win and you are in if the Reds do not prevail against the Milwaukee Brewers, everybody. And I want to hear from everybody watching live and to our replay viewers in the comments down below. What is your biggest takeaway from this 5-0 victory today? Thank you guys kindly for those donations. I really appreciate that. I'm just trying to get caught up here, so apologies, everybody. Juliet with the $2 haul rather says, guess what I will be watching this evening? I'm going to go on a lengthy guess here and say it has something to do with the Cincinnati and the Reds, huh? Thank you so much for the donation. D-Mac with the $2 holla. 2 for some Fool's Gold is my kind of bargain at LGM. Thank you so much for the donation. I'm not going to be locked in on the Reds game tonight. I'm going to be keeping tabs on it, but I'm going to watch a movie tonight because I've been looking forward to watching this movie, and I'm not going to let Reds hate watch get in the way of that, especially if the Reds win. Then I'm going to be unbelievably miserable about my evening. You know what I mean? So I'm not going to do more damage on myself when it comes to my Mets baseball fan of out of all things, because I know the damage left, right, and center like all you guys do. So I am going to just nonchalant take a peek at how the score is going and how the trend of the game is going on and off my phone throughout the course of the evening. Nick with the donation, thank you so much. Brandon, great member of 9 months, states the following: needs some help, which doesn't feel great, but we work best with our backs against the wall. I hope you're right, my guy, because all season long the Mets have not worked at their best with their backs against the wall. Hopefully that isn't the case. Right now the Phillies are losing to the Minnesota Twins, for anyone that's keeping tabs on that. For Nick with the $20 haul here. Thank you, Nick. I appreciate that. Donated last night and the Mets won today. Got to keep it going. I appreciate that. I'm never going to say no to the donos, but I appreciate the fact that you are a nice superstitious man like myself, because listen, if it ain't broke, why fix it, right? So that's kind of why I stopped doing the lobster, because I kept getting comments on how the Mets weren't really winning, regardless of me doing that little rally with the lobster. If you guys don't know the lobster, it's just a little decal of a lobster that I hold around and dance around with like a goofball. But now we got the bobblehead going. If the Mets lose tomorrow, then we know that nothing could get anything going this year. That's as simple as that. But the Mets do need to win tomorrow. That goes without saying. It's not like a lot that they need to win, because seeing the Arizona Diamondbacks officially bounce thanks to the Padres yesterday is obviously encouraging. But knowing that, you know, even if the Reds lose today and the Mets lose tomorrow, then we're going to be hoping and praying that the Reds lose that series against the Brewers, when it's far from a lock to happen. So there's a lot at stake when we look at the next 24 hours. It is make or break. It's put up or shut up time for this New York Mets team. But as I've been saying, everybody, you just have to worry about what you can control right now. The Mets control their destiny. They put themselves in this position. God willing, the Reds lose later this evening, and you're watching this to our replay viewers and you're like, heck yeah, win and we're in, baby. Even though the Mets don't deserve to be in postseason this year, and I think that goes without saying for a team that's been 10 plus games below 500 for over basically 90 games now since mid-June of this season. I still want to see my team have a deep playoff run, because the Mets don't make playoffs every single year. Even under Steve Cohen, it hasn't been a lock, obviously. Year 1, you don't make it. Year 2, you do, but you're bounced right away. Year 3, you don't make it. Year 4, you do, and you have a deep run. Now year 5, you have Juan Soto in his first year as a New York Met. At minimum, you're hoping to have a deep playoff run, am I right? So everybody hitting that like and subscribe button. Thank you guys kindly. Help us get to 200 plus likes to all of our live and recurring viewers. To our replay viewers especially, help us get a 400 plus. Really does mean a lot. And everybody, shout out to our amazing sponsors there at SeatGeek and Manta Sleep. Manta, the best sleep masks in the game. Check them out with my link down below in the description, everybody. Use promo code WARDY. That way you too will be able to get yourself a nice hookup of a discount there. We're awesome friends at Manta and SeatGeek. Utilize our promo code WARDY10, which is linked down below as well. That way you too get 10% off your next ticket purchase. Whether you want to get Mets tickets for the final game of the season there tomorrow in Miami, if you're in the relative area, or if you're going to fly in for the red eye, you're going to just do a day trip, whatever you may do. Whether you want to get in on the NFL action, whether you want to get in on the NHL action, NBA right around the corner, anything that you need in the ticketing space, SeatGeek has you covered. Check them out, WARDY10, and thank you so much in advance for that, everybody. Now, folks, let's talk about this ball game. There wasn't a lot that happened, which is what makes this a nice kind of breakdown of a summary. So let's start with the good here. What was the good? The Mets didn't have the sexiest numbers with runners in scoring position today, but it also wasn't the worst thing imaginable. They went 4 for 13. Were able to provide key offense for the Mets, not just early, but down the stretch for some key insurance before everything was said and done. If the Mets didn't have that insurance, I think we could all agree we'd be shaking in our boots a little bit more there in the ninth inning, even with Diaz, just because, again, Diaz has blown a couple saves over the past month and a half or so. Not that he's done that all season, but recency bias will tell you that there's a smidge of a concern there, knowing that you are in such a do-or-die situation today. So having that 5-run cushion for Edwin to cruise the way they did in the ninth inning was really nice to see. And also, everybody, shout out to every single Mets fan that attended, not just yesterday's game, even though they unfortunately didn't prevail, but today, to see the Mets ball out there in Miami, otherwise known as Citi Field South. Oh my goodness gracious, it was like the World Baseball Classic with the vibes that they had going there. And no, I'm not joking when I say that, everybody. Let me show you guys a quick clip of a follower of mine that was at the game, and you know, they just had the music bopping. And mind you, I went to Miami in 2023 for the World Baseball Classic. Francisco Lindor's captain Team Puerto Rico versus Team Venezuela, and it was a great game. Venezuela won it, but the entire time you were in a World Series type atmosphere. It was the loudest sports event that I've ever been a part of, which was insane. I mean, Puerto Rico was down like 6 runs, and as soon as they made it a 5-run difference, you acted like they just won the World Series. That's how much the place erupted, and it wasn't that crazy, but it got really, really loud here. You can hear the Mets fans roar, and listen to this clip, everybody. Just start by listening to the following clip.
He takes off, and Soto walks, and here comes Taylor. He'll score on the wild pitch. Taylor comes home to make it 5-0.
And now take a look at this, everybody. They were having a blast there. So shout out not only to all the Mets fans, shout out to everybody there that was making this an absolute blast. Felt like a playoff atmosphere. It really did. And listen, this goes in hand with Carlos Mendoza saying that everything feels like it's Game 7 right now of the World Series. You got to approach it that way. Otherwise, the Mets may find themselves still not making postseason play. As we continue on, though, everybody, this ball game begins with Francisco Lindor with a leadoff walk, which you're happy to see. And Lindor would be right in the thick of success for the Mets today yet again. Because after that wild pitch by Perez that would put Lindor immediately in the scoring position, we would see Alonso drive him in with his 41st double of the season. Alonso continues to climb the leaderboard when looking at RBIs on the season, and he gives the Mets that early 1-0 lead that we saw. Brandon Nimmo then gets on base with a single, which was clutch, and then he would steal his 13th bag of the year. So the Mets had runners at second and third, less than 2-way right away in the first. I'm locked in. I'm at the edge of my seat. I'm saying to myself, are we going to pounce early on Yuri Perez again, just like we did at Citi Field, where he's going to be out of here in a couple innings because he's like shaking in his boots? Sadly, we didn't get him that bad today, but they did get early offense. The Mets would go down from Marte McNeil from there. As we get to the bottom of the first, everybody, we would see Xavier Edwards, Jacob Marcy, and Connor Norby. What do they all have in common? 1, 2, 3, they're all out of here for Clay Holmes in the first inning. JPG, thank you for the $2 holla. I jinxed Yuri Perez's one hitter. Love to see it. Great job, my guy. Thank you so much for that donation. You're doing us proud. In the second inning, the Mets would go down in order 1, 2, 3, including a not so great swing by Ronnie Maurice Mauricio, but credit where credit is due. For Ronnie Mauricio, who's not played much baseball at all here, he did a fantastic job today. He kept the Mets in it when it looked at his solid defense at third, quite the contrary from what we saw yesterday, and also had himself a nice knock or two. And as we continued in the bottom of the second inning, another 1-2-3 for Clay Holmes as he would strike out Troy Johnson as the lone strikeout there in the inning. Then as we get to the third, folks, who steps up? Yes, you guessed it. It's the polar bear. It's high, it's far, and it is gone. Pete Alonso's 38th home run this season, just too shy of another 40 home run season for the polar bear. Puts the Mets up now 2-0 with a nice little early insurance run. Nimmo would strike out, but not before the Mets would now be up 2-0. As we get ourselves to the bottom of the third inning, we would see Humberto Hernandez get on there with a 2-out walk. Then Xavier Edwards with a single. So with 2 outs, Clay Holmes is not looking overly great in this circumstance. How would he get out of this situation? And he gets what he has done so greatly all throughout this season, that is quality ground ball outs. He gets Marcy for the final out of the inning, and he gets it out of it, that jam, unscathed. In the fourth inning, Alvarez gets on with a 2-out walk, but another not so great at bat by Ronnie Mauricio ends the inning there with his second strikeout in the first 4 innings. Then we see everybody a 1-2-3 against Miami here for Clay Holmes. He gets Norby and Hicks and Johnston out without a problem. In the fifth inning, Tyron Taylor and Lindor strike out, and Soto strikes out. The striking out the side inning for Yuri Perez there in the fifth. In the bottom of the sixth, we see everybody with 2 outs. Graham Pauley would a walk. Hernandez would a walk. This has been the biggest problem that we have seen with Clay Holmes this season. I think we could all agree. It's when he's walking these guys on 2 outs especially. All you need is one final out, and you're hopefully smooth sailing out of this thing. But instead, he puts himself in a little bit of a jam again, but it does not matter. He gets the ground out on Xavier Edwards there, and that would do it for the inning. Back-to-back innings for Clay here, where he escapes 2 out, 2 on jams without anything happening. And then everybody, the sixth inning, Alonso gets on with a walk, and then we would see him get to second base because thankfully Yuri Perez balked somehow, some way. Nimmo would strike out again, unfortunately, but then here we go. Yuri Perez is out of the ball game, and that would come back to bite and hurt this Miami Marlins ball club because McNeil then with 2 outs rips his 21st double of the year. Jeff McDoubles, everybody, puts the Mets up 3-0 in this ball game, and then we get an Alvarez line out, and that does it there for the top of the sixth. In the bottom of the sixth, another 1-2-3 here for Mr. Clay Holmes, and that'll do it for Clay Holmes' final line, everybody. You guys see it. Let's go ahead and sincerely appreciate it. Clay Holmes goes 6 innings of 1 hit, 0 earned run, 3 walk, 2 strikeout baseball now, and Clay Holmes finishes his 2025 regular season as a starter for the first time since 2018 with an ERA of 3.53. Dave, my guy, great member, NY committee, JTB, James Carroll, everyone else, all my live members and recurring viewers, happy to have you in here. Jojo, Juliet, Ryan, all you guys, thank you so much. Appreciate you guys. Continue to smash that like and subscribe on your way in as we're breaking down a much needed, a huge victory for the Mets, 5-0 over the Miami Marlins, keeping their playoff hopes alive, at least for one final day, getting set. And how fitting is it that for the second year in a row, the Mets are going to need to secure a victory on the final day of their regular season in order to have a chance to actually make postseason play. Let's all again continue to pray that the Reds lose, or by the time you're watching this, they have lost today, which means that a victory for the Mets tomorrow would be a win it, and you're in it. That's what we're hoping and praying at this point in time. So, as we continue on, Clay Holmes, what was so good about Clay today, everybody? Well, the Arsenal, headlined by that sinker, he utilized it 50% of the time, got so many great ground balls out of it, topped out 96, sat 94, and was right around 21 to 2200 on his spin rate per the RPMs. The sweeper was 26% of his Arsenal today, topped out 84, sat right around 83, and was right around 2800 on the RPMs. The changeup, 12% of the Arsenal, topped out 90, sat right around 88, was right around 1000 on the RPMs. The slider at 6% of his Arsenal today, topped out 86, sat right around 86, was right around 2600 on the RPMs. The cutter at 6% of the Arsenal as well, topped out 92, sat right around 91 on the velo, and was right around 2500 on the RPMs. Clay Holmes, everybody, gets a fat 9 out of 10. What he just did for the Mets today cannot be understated, okay? Usually I wouldn't give a 9 out of 10 to just a 6-inning outing by a pitcher, but he did this on 77 pitches, mind you, and he could have went deeper if the Mets really wanted him to, but I think Mendy played his cards right. He brought in the proper relievers today. I don't really have any qualms with Carlos Mendoza outside my initial concern heading into the ball game with a guy like Ronnie Mauricio starting in kind of an elimination game. But this is where not only Ronnie stepped up big time, but also Luis Angel Acuna, who came in as a late-game defense replacement. If it wasn't for Acuna's dazzling defense, who knows what would have happened potentially with this Mets team down the stretch here. So fantastic job all around. Easy 9 out of 10 for Clay Holmes. Dominant outing, his best start yet as a New York Met, and hopefully he can continue that great play into postseason play for this Mets team beginning on Tuesday or Wednesday in LA against those Dodgers, barring changes, everybody. So that is what we're going to hope and continue to pray for, because that is what the playoff configuration is looking like right now. So to get back in it, to continue to break down this 5-0 victory for the Mets, we get ourselves in the 7th, and in the 7th, we would see Ronnie Mauricio lead the inning off with a single. That would be huge. Then TT gets him to second base with a nice sac bump there. Lindor would fly out, and that fly out would allow Ronnie to unfortunately not go anywhere. But then Soto comes on, and he gets on with a walk that, mind you, he almost got drilled right in the head. So shout out to Josh Simpson for being an absolute schmuck and not knowing the strike zone if it smacked him across the face. There's 2 on, 2 out for Pete Alonso, and unfortunately Alonso is bested this time by Simpson as he strikes him out to end the inning. The Mets strand a pair there, so they're still up, but not as comfortable as you want to be, as we obviously got to the bottom of the 7th inning. And in the bottom of the 7th inning, we saw Brooks Raley come in, and Brooks Raley continue to do what he has done all season long. That's 1, 2, 3 outings. Brooks Raley now on the season with right around a 2.2 ERA, if not lower. A tremendous pickup for the Mets to bring back coming off of that reconstructed Tommy John surgery. For those that don't know or remember Raley, who was fantastic in his first year for the Mets in 2023, as the Mets initially traded for him from the Tampa Bay Rays organization for a funky reliever that was currently at that time in high A or so, and Kashawn Askew. He's a guy that I'm sure may blossom down the road for the Rays if he hasn't already. Then you look at what he does for the Mets in 2024. First 8 appearances, the Mets suck to begin the season. He, however, doesn't even allow a single earned run before going down with that reconstructed Tommy John surgery. Returned there this summer, and he has been nothing short of utterly dominant, and honestly, maybe a greater reliever option than what we would have gone at all in AJ Minter, even at his best this season, because Brooks really is nothing short of nails. And the best part, everybody, the Mets have club control for him next season with a team option, as long as they exercise that, and obviously, they most certainly are going to. So we would see really what a 1, 2, 3 there, as we then get set for the 8th inning. And in the 8th inning, the Mets unfortunately do nothing. They go down quickly on the bats. And then Tyler Rogers comes in, another reliever who I hope to see return to this Mets team next season. Another quality outing for Rogers, who gets Pauly, Hernandez, and Edwards, and he strikes Edwards' ass out without a problem, everybody. I'm amped up, you're amped up, but we're still a little angst. We get ourselves to the 9th inning. The Mets are up by 3 thanks to the McDoubles that made it a 3-run ball game to drive in Alonso earlier, as well as Alonso's 38th home run of the season and his 41st double to initially begin the ball game. As we see there, Alvarez with a nice little bloopy, a nice little dunk up the middle for the most part, puts him on as that leadoff runner to begin the inning. Ronnie Mauricio strikes out for the 3rd time today, but Tyrone Taylor then gets on with a single of his own. He pulls himself a single. Mets have 2 on, 1 away, and here we go. We got Francisco Lindor, who steps up yet again. Right away, Lindor's swinging, and he pokes it in the hole between 1st and 2nd. That brings in a run, and the Mets are now up 4-0 in this ball game. But let's go ahead and let's add more insurance, and let's make it 5-0. Juan Soto would get on with a walk there, and then Tyrone would come in to score, because Tyrone scores on the wild pitch. Wild thing. Da-na-da-na. This is the part where you guys sing, okay? Either way, Marlins, they give up another run thanks to the wild pitch. It's a 5-0 Mets lead for Edwin Diaz as we get ourselves to the bottom of the inning, because Alonso does nothing and Marte would ground out to end the top of the 9th. In the bottom of the 9th inning, with 2 outs after Marcy strikes out and Norby flies out quickly for Edwin Diaz, Liam Hicks gets on with an unfortunate hit by pitch, but then that is it, everybody. He would get to second base by advancing on the defensive indifference, but Ramirez grounds out. Edwin Diaz cruises yet again, everybody, and this Mets bullpen was nothing short of dazzling. Mets bullpen today also gets a 9 out of 10. The only reason why I'm not going to go 10 out of 10 is because a greater outing than this would have been more than 3 innings of bullpen work of Squirrels outings. This is really close, though. I mean, had they won 4 or 5 innings of only allowing no hits, I mean, actually, if I'm being honest with you, if we went 5 innings, then it would have been 10 out of 10. I'm almost borderline going 9.5 with the bullpen. The only reason why I'm not going out of my way is because they didn't have as many innings to work with. I do take into account with my bullpen grades on a scale of 1 to 10 how many innings the bullpen collectively ate in the ball game. And Clay Holmes giving the Mets 6 innings, something that they've gotten so few and far in between throughout the course of the second half. deserves great appreciation in its own. But Clay Holmes, a 9 out of 10. Bullpen gets a 9 out of 10. And this Mets offense today, as we see, didn't have a lot to give, but Pete Alonso stepped up mightily, as did Juan Soto, everybody. Juan Soto continues to defy the odds and continues to separate himself as one of the best players of this generation. Soto now has tied the Mets record for walks in a singular season with 125. He is tied with the great John Olerud, who unfortunately was not a New York Met as long as he probably should have. One of those guys I think gets forgotten about a little bit when he most certainly shouldn't. One of the most underrated Mets in franchise history. We also take a look at the list of MLB history with 5 straight seasons of 125 walks for a batter. We have Ted Williams and Juan Soto. That's pretty damn good company if you ask me. So Juan Soto continuing to separate himself from the rest. His first year as a New York Met, and what do we get from Juan Soto? Oh, we just get casually the best regular season in Mets team franchise history from a batter for the most part. That's actually insane. And Pete Alonso just said, everybody, for tonight at least, go Brewers. See? Everybody's locked in. Alonso, who helped kick the Brewers out of postseason play a year ago, is now going to depend on those Brewers to hopefully prevail against those Reds. And obviously, we're all hoping and praying for the same. And there's already a nice leadoff hit for the Brewers, so that's great, everybody. Love to see that. And again, folks, to all of our replay viewers, I'm hoping that you're watching this after the Reds lose that game too, and the Mets are win it and in it away from securing postseason play. If they're not and they lose, it's unfortunate, and then you could retract all my comments about talking about getting all giddy about the Mets having to win it or in it situation. We're not officially there yet, unfortunately. But listen, that's what we got from the Mets bats today, everybody. 4 for 13 with runners in scoring position. Lindor, 267 average, 809 OPS. He has a chance to get that average up to 270 and an 800 plus OPS to end the regular season. Juan Soto, 265. Same thing applies for the most part at 924 OPS. We would see Alonso, 273 average, 874 OPS. Nimmo, 262 average, 762 OPS. Marte, 270 average, 245 OPS. McNeil, 246 average, 273 OPS. Acuna, 234 average, 567 OPS. Alvey, 260 average and a 799 OPS. And Ronnie Mauricio, 229 average and a 662 OPS. Tyrone Taylor, 221 average and 596 OPS, everybody. That is what you're getting in the Mets offense in this prevailing 5-0 victory today. Now to hop back over here, let's answer a couple of these comments and then let's continue on. KC with a $5 donation. Thank you, KC. He states the following. Funny story, I kept insisting we ended 2008 with the Nats, and I was confused why everyone said Miami. It's because Ryan Church made last out, former Nat. That makes sense. Thank you so much for that donation. That is pretty funny, KC. Seamus with the $2 holla states, every game I come to Miami is just like a home game. Oh, it absolutely. You got to make sure you're attending tomorrow. If you attended today, my guy, that's the next step. Seriously. Any Mets fan that attended today's game has to attend tomorrow. Okay, it is mandatory. I'm not asking, I'm telling, but do yourself a favor and save some dough on your next ticket purchase there by heading over to SeatGeek and utilizing our promo code WARDY10 for 10% off your next ticket purchase. Link down below. And damn, was that a smooth little transition for a quick ad. But in all seriousness, you might as well utilize it. You're going to save money. Literally, you're welcome. So now let's talk, everybody, about what is next for this Mets team, okay? Huge victory. Huge victory. Let's see if there are any key remarks yet that we have from guys like Carlos Mendoza on the thought process, the philosophy heading into tomorrow's matchup. I think it goes without saying, but I'm very concerned on the idea of Sean Manaea pitching tomorrow as a starter. I don't love him as a reliever either, but the Mets, we are in dire times right now. We have to get something of consistency going. And if they don't, then we may not find ourselves in postseason play. Let's see here what Mr. Carlos Mendoza had to say. We don't have any remarks from him yet post. Oh, here we do. Here we do. Mendoza says the Mets will announce tomorrow's starter at some point tonight. So the Mets will announce at some point tonight, everybody. So be on the lookout for it. Again, your options for tomorrow's starter will be one of the following, I would imagine. Huascar Brosban if they go spot starter. Jonathan, Sean Manaea, David Peterson. That's pretty much the immediate mix of guys I'd imagine that they are considering to start the ball game. Remember, whoever starts the ball game does not mean that they're going to be in that ball game long. There's a great reality where the Mets basically have an entire bullpen game tomorrow, also knowing that if they do say secure postseason play, they're at least going to have one off day. Not that that's much. It really isn't anything for them to just have one travel day to LA and then play on Tuesday, but at least they will have that one day breather to a degree before they would have to play again, meaning that that alone is a reason as to why the Mets may be more prompted to go full bullpen game, just going balls to the wall crazy, throwing everyone that they think is the best option for them to throw out there from the bullpen and kind of move forward and see what's going to happen. So we will see on that front, everybody, but I'd imagine it'll be one of those 4 pitchers, and we'll talk more about that tomorrow, either in a video that'll drop before the ball game, or we'll break down post game if the Mets are still alive when it comes to the playoff hopes, and they are dead, or if it's going to be somewhere in between. Now, I do want to see real quick, everybody, the game times for tomorrow. I'm curious if the Mets and the Brewers are lined up similarly, and they're an hour off from each other, because the Mets play at 3:10 p.m. Eastern tomorrow. The Brewers play tomorrow at, drumroll please, they play tomorrow at 3:10. Perfect. So we're going to perfectly find out. It's going to be in a line. As soon as tomorrow's Mets game is over, likely the Reds game will be over too. Change the ending. You said it, Just Mets. Hope we're doing well, brother. Happy to have you in here. I like that. Change the ending is a good little hashtag to get going. But listen, we have to rely on a Brewers team that we kicked out of postseason play last year to now go ahead and do us a favor. You know, if I'm Milwaukee, that's the last thing I want to do. If I'm being honest with you, from an outsider's lens, and it's hard to say this without a bias, but I feel like the Mets would be more of a threat to a team like the Brewers in postseason play than the Cincinnati Reds. And I don't say that as a slight to what has been a fantastic job for Mr. Francona in year 1 as Reds manager and all the great things that they've done with the rotation this year especially. But I think the experience the Mets have is going to be able to bode them well should they be able to get into postseason rather. I'm not saying it's a lock. I'm not saying anything's a guarantee, but I think the Mets will be able to lean and bounce off a bit of the experience that they had last year in a way that would help them move forward should they crack postseason play, where the Reds, I don't have that same level of comfortability or confidence, more because this is going to be their first run, and you may find some nervous jitters, especially if, say, like, for example, the Reds and the Brewers played in postseason right away. I'm not saying that's how the configuration is. I'm just saying, hypothetically, if that were the case, if I'm Milwaukee, how are you not utterly confident? You know, regardless on your lack of playoff wins and runs as of late, you've at least made playoffs consistently, basically every single season for at least the past 5, 6, 7 years, it feels like, for the most part. So I think that alone is a factor as to why we might see the Brewers maybe not have the best pitching matchups in favor of this Mets team when looking at Brewers versus Reds here. But wishful thinking, I'm going to be hopeful more than anything that the Mets can get some help, some alleviation from that Brewers team, and then we'll worry about the Brewers and everyone else in postseason play once we officially get in there. Because right now, as we currently speak, it's 0-0 heading to the bottom, not bottom, but heading to the top of the second inning. I'm not going to do too much of the play-by-play between Reds and the Brewers in this one unless you guys find out something crazy that happens. Ranger Suarez is out of the game for the Phillies already in the bottom of the 5th inning that we see. He's out. He's out for 5 innings is what you're saying, because the Phillies are down 3 in the bottom of the 5th with 1 out and 1 on for themselves there because they're playing home right now. Also, one final thing I did want to say before we get on to some other topics and probably cut things off for replay viewers soon is that Dylan Ross call-up is going to be a really interesting one. You know, knowing that the Mets are going to kind of throw whatever they think sticks out there tomorrow, you do have to wonder and ponder, will the Mets actually consider an inexperienced rookie right-hander who's never pitched at the major league levels until tomorrow, and literally a do-or-die game for the New York Mets? That'll dictate if they even make postseason. It's a great question that I don't really have the answer to right now, but you'd have to imagine if they called him up and feel this confident in him, we may see him, you know, in a solid spot tomorrow, especially if the Mets say get an early lead in similarity to what they did today. Suarez left due to injury. That is not good for Phillies and their fans. I'm not going to at all boast for Phillies. I'm not going to at all try to uplift them, but I don't wish injury on anybody. The same way that I was crushed to see Zach Wheeler not only go down with injury, but with thoracic outlet syndrome, which is very difficult to rebound your career from when he's planning to retire as soon as his contract is up in a season and a half or two at this rate. I feel terrible for him, but I wish him the best. Ranger Suarez, I hope, is okay and isn't seriously hurt because he's one of these guys that if the Mets get a chance to match up and play the Phillies in postseason play, like anything else, I want to play these teams at their best, because when you don't play these teams at their best and say you still beat them, then there's going to be the endless excuses. Well, we didn't have so-and-so and this and that. You know, I understand the Mets have not had a lot of guys due to injury this year as well, but, you know, care about what you can control. So wishing Ranger Suarez the best. Hopefully it's nothing serious in regards to that injury. Tingus, thank you for the donation. I appreciate that. He says, did you hear GKR heavily critique Mendoza for questionable management today? Be surprised if Mendy's bet. Yeah, no, he's been heavily critiqued a lot the past couple weeks, Tingus. And in response to that, I think that there's still a solid possibility that Carlos Mendoza is this manager next year. I'm not saying that as to go to bat for him for his lack of proper decision making, because that would be silly of me. However, what I will say is that we are going to be in a position where Carlos Mendoza, losing him for next season, will also hurt this organization in other ways. Is it possible that they could fire him, Stearns brings in someone new, and he works out perfectly? Okay. But a decision like what Carlos Mendoza just made is another factor that could go in hand as to why I may crash out tomorrow and want him to no longer be Mets manager. And that decision, everybody, just became public. So I'm going to relay it to each and every one of you watching live on a replay. I'm glad that it happened while we were still live here, because we were just pondering, who is the Mets starter going to be tomorrow? Well, folks, it does appear that the Mets starter in the do or die game, win it and you're possibly in it, is going to be, yes. Oh, my God. His leash needs to be 2 innings. Sean Manaea, the Samoan Southpaw, the Tribal Chief, is your Game 162 starter for the New York Mets. Sean Manaea, who gave up 3 earned runs across 3 innings the last time he was on the mound as a starter. Before that, he gave up 2 earned runs and not even 2 innings as a reliever, as he gave up a 2-run home run to the second batter he faced in Michael Busch right away as he came in the ball game there against the Cubs a couple days ago. Manaea has given up at least 1 home run in what feels like every single of his last 5 outings. I am awfully concerned. I understand that we really don't have any better maybe solutions at the moment, but maybe you do. So this is how you need to go about this with Sean Manaea, knowing that he's your starter. You have to have everybody and their mother ready in this bullpen. You need to have someone ready in the first inning, because who knows if Manaea absolutely crumbles and throws a 40-pitch first. He may go for a 1-2-3 and 10 pitches, but we do not know. There's too much uncertainty in what you're getting with someone like him. You need to have someone ready. And Huascar Brazoban needs to be on standby. He's a guy who very well could be eating length for the Mets tomorrow. Dylan Ross may eat an inning at some point should it happen. When you look at the other options for the Mets to consider, do not be shocked if Jonathan is thrown out there, even though that there's obvious risk involved with the young rookie right-hander in a circumstance in a do-or-die game like that for the Mets. We've seen him crumble already under the bright lights. Not sure if that would be the most ideal circumstance for him. Brandon Sproat, if you're going to utilize him in a reliever outing, there's risk involved, but also some upside. The Mets don't have a lot of options is the problem, and you're not going to utilize Clay Holmes and a piggyback outing here. Could the Mets go with a Brandon Waddell or someone to be utilized out of the bullpen if they haven't called them up already to be utilized in a piggyback circumstance where maybe he could try to eat anywhere from 2.5 to 4 innings for you tomorrow? That's possible, but you also take the risk of him getting rocked too. So yeah, unfortunately, everybody, this is just the nature of the beast. The Mets don't have an overly ideal pitching option at all. So they're going to have to go with Sean Manaea, who, when we first headed in the season, if I told you that Sean Manaea would be a viable pitching option down the stretch, you'd be like, oh, that's not good. We just signed him to a 3-year, $75 million contract. But it makes a lot more sense when you understand that Manaea is coming off of an oblique injury that started the season, that began the year late for him, that set him back completely, and B, has a loose body in his elbow that needs surgery at the end of the season. So not overly ideal at all, but this is the circumstance the Mets put themselves in. Yeah, I think we're going to see, you might see David Peterson tomorrow. Brazoban, I think, is almost a certainty that we will see tomorrow, if I'm being honest with you, which could go good. It's facing his former team. He knows this ballpark very well. I'd like to think that he would have a nice little chip on his shoulder facing Miami, the team that traded him. Even though I don't think he's complaining too much about not being a Miami Marlin right now, this is a really, really important day in more ways than one, everybody. So I'm just going to let you all know right here, right now, when it comes to content tomorrow, we will have at minimum a post-game show. We may possibly do an endgame watch party live stream. That's to be determined. I will get back to you guys on that. The watch party may make sense, especially depending on what happens there with how aligned that game is with the Reds. We also may have a video that drops in the AM, but that's not a guarantee. It's just a possibility, so be on the lookout if that does in fact happen. But that's what we have currently cooking up as we get into Mañana as of now. Kind of crazy knowing that tomorrow may be the final game that I cover this season, everybody. Tomorrow will be, again, the 162nd game that I've covered. I've covered pretty much every single game this year. Maybe I've missed like 2 or 3 just because of like one-offs, things of that nature, but I've covered, without question, pretty much every single game. Spring training for the most part too, we've covered. It has been a grind, an absolute grind, going all the way back to late February or early March of doing this every single day. So thank you guys for being here through thick and thin, through all the highs and what has been a lot of lows here in the second half. The good news is that regardless of what happens with the Mets tomorrow and their playoff fate, live streams aren't going anywhere. So as we get into the offseason, I promise you, we will have weekly live shows of at least 1 to start, and then it'll probably expand from there. We may do more daily live shows as well if it really warrants the discussion, if I'm being honest with you. We may just have a lot of fun miscellaneous live shows throughout the offseason and talking about various things, from obviously roster build to coaches coming in, coaches going out, player personnel coming in, player personnel coming out, all those kind of things we're going to be talking about. So definitely be on the lookout for it. Content will be always grinding here on the platform, regardless on the time of year that we are in. We're always going to be pumping out pretty much daily stuff. So make sure you're tapped in. Don't go anywhere. Just because the season may be coming to a close does not mean that we here on the WardyNYM platform are going anywhere. Far from it. So again, thank you guys for your continued support. I always appreciate you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Let's see, everybody. Let's get into a brief mention here of you guys are saying there was a big throw or so. There's 2 on with 2 away and the top of the second inning for the Brewers trying to get out of that jam there against the Reds. We'll see if anything happens there. But guys, let's now defer to answering whatever comments, questions, and concerns that you guys got for me. I will double check just to make sure that there are no immediate comments that I want to share in regards to what Carlos Mendoza had to say post-game or any specific players. If there's no immediate comments that I feel the need to relay to you guys, then that'll be it for the replay viewers, and then I'll cut things off and just have everybody that's watching live continue the live show for the next 10, 15 minutes, however long it's going to be. If Cincinnati wins, are we eliminated? No. If Cincinnati wins, we are not eliminated. However, if Cincy wins, they need to lose tomorrow, and the Mets have to win. If Cincy loses today, but both of them lose tomorrow, then the Mets are cooked because they'll be tied. All the Mets need is to have one more win than the Reds. They cannot be tied with the Reds. If they end this season tied with the Reds, they are not making playoffs, unfortunately, because that's what happens when Jonathan wasn't a terrible outing, but he gave up 4 across 3 hits, all thanks to home runs in Game 2 against the Reds. And, Hunter Green, Brady Singer dominated us in those back-to-back days, sadly. That's why the Mets don't have the tiebreaker currently on Cincy. Shaman I is towing the rubber tomorrow. Oh, my God. Clay Holmes talks about changing sides of the rubber during at-bats. Oh, he did do something different. He said he's been waiting for that question. Let's hear from Clay real quick. This is interesting.
Clay, when did you start switching sides of the rubber mid-at-bat, and what does that do to add to your effectiveness?
It's probably the 4th outing now that I've been doing it. Been waiting for that question. I think it's just a different window to look. The hitters have to look at and try to see, where my stuff's coming out of. Especially a guy that kind of relies on east-west movement. Moving even more side to side and just trying to take advantage of that a little bit. And I first started trying the bullpen, and it felt really good. And I said, why not? Let's do it in a game. And I think the first time I actually did it was the bases loaded against Philly, and just said, why not? Let's go for it. And ended up striking a guy out, and yeah, just been kind of tinkering with it back and forth ever since then, and I think it's been effective, and I look forward to kind of seeing where that goes.
Was that something you'd ever done before in your career, in your life?
No, first time. Yeah.
Where did you figure it out from, or did somebody suggest it?
I mean, really, I've kind of messed around with a little bit in bullpen some, and for me, just kind of thinking through of kind of how hitters might approach me and things I can do differently. It just kind of makes sense, if I'm able to do it and my command stays the same. Why not kind of add another element of just some more angles and some more deception. Yeah, so it's just kind of just trial and error, tinkering with it and just kind of asking around and seeing, there's some pitchers that I'm sure have done it before. There's people out there that do it, so I don't think it's a new thing. Yeah, so it just felt good. So I said, why?
Are you going to be watching the Reds game?
Should I? I probably, I don't know. Yeah, but all I can say is for today, at least, go Brewers.
What is my hat size? I don't have a specific hat size because I only wear snapbacks usually. My head is a freaking melon, so I really don't wear the fitted hats nearly as much as I wear snapbacks or just something of a strap in the back, because otherwise my head's throbbing. I got a melon for a head. I do. But all right, guys, let's continue our live show to all of our live viewers for the next 10 to 15 minutes or so I can answer whatever comments, questions, concerns you guys got for me as we get set for the final game of the regular season for this Mets team. To everybody that watched on replay, thank you guys so much for it. I really do appreciate it. Hit that like and subscribe on your way out. If you guys have not already, let me know your biggest takeaway from this huge game to victory in Miami. 5-0 is your final score. Pete Alonso records his 41st double this season, his 38th home run of the year, 126 RBIs and counting for the Polar Bear, and Clay Holmes gives the Mets a one-hit masterclass of an outing in this 5-0 victory. All right, guys, let's continue on the live show. To everybody on replay, this is where we're cutting things off.